Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel with some breaking news from the United Kingdom. The crisis of our prison system continues as the government seem to be all over the place, and some response to the prisoners who have already been released is getting fascinating because we have already had the cabinet, including people like Rachel Reeves, showing outrage apparently, because some of the criminals and prisoners who came out early before completing their process and getting official rehabilitation or anything like that were celebrating outside the prisons yesterday and popping out champagne or whatever that happened. But as expected and predicted, obviously a number of them will go back to crime. Some of them already have other cases against them, which is now raising many questions about how and why they were released when the authorities and the establishment should have known about those individuals, whether there are other cases against them or not, any other investigation, or what they're going to be doing the moment they come out. We're going to talk about a couple of examples of how policing and justice seem to be not working really well in this country. For example, this man, who is 28 years old, at the moment he came out of prison, he had to be arrested again for sexual crimes, serious sexual offences. And obviously now we're going to have Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, I'm guessing tomorrow, coming out with a statement showing outrage. Nobody from the actual bureaucracy part of the state, the people who actually chose this list, because it's not necessarily the government ministers that are in charge of the daily operations of whatever happens. So they have to rely on bureaucrats, whether it's civil servants or people who work in prisons or the police, justice system. These guys are the ones who do the actual job. And in this case, not a good job. The issue we have is that the scapegoats are usually the government ministers. The government ministers must be responsible. We get it. But I have a feeling over the last few decades, the media, the political establishment have been allowing us to be angry and disappointed at our politicians, government ministers, up to a point where even if they have to throw them under the bus, it's okay. So, perfect example I always use is Matt Hancock when he was health secretary. A lot of people blamed everything on him, obviously. He's the decision maker, we get it. But those who make the actual daily operational decisions in the healthcare, and of course the scientific advisors and everybody else, the medical advisors in Downing Street, the cabinet office, they didn't get any scrutiny. So you might have pushed Matt Hancock out, but nothing actually changed. Yes, Matt Hancock should have gone, but alongside him, others should have also answered questions or go. So the Metropolitan Police have come out to say a 28-year-old man was arrested on Tuesday, that's yesterday, literally after he was released from prison, on suspicion of rape, sexual assault, and a racially and religiously aggravated public order offence. He was taken to a South London police station from Wandsworth before being bailed. He's already been bailed out, by the way, pending further inquiries in relation to the allegation of course, rape. No further action will be taken in connection with the other allegations. Now, there's so many issues with this whole statement. I understand we have due process. We understand, we get it. We have to treat everybody fairly, even suspects. The issue I have is, if this person was already a criminal for whatever the original crime was, we don't know the actual original crime, right? And he's now been arrested for this. Is he not technically could be a threat to society? Why do we not have a system where bail is not allowed properly, or at least short term, when somebody could be dangerous? We have it on paper. Oh yeah, technically we have it on paper, but in terms of the implementation of it, if somebody is going around harming people, now there are different types of crimes. If someone is doing white collar crime, and it's still bad, or hacking into people's accounts or whatever they do, it's still crime. We get it. And they have to be arrested, investigated, everything. But things like sexual offense and these sort of things are imminent physical threats to people walking freely on the streets. I believe that he should not receive, he should not be bailed out. And I believe in order to make it fair, while you avoid bailing him out, you actually do the fast tracking thing that they were doing with the protesters and the rioters. Surely you must be able to say, well, there is one space now open in prison because it was a guy who was released, but that's his space. Let's just send him in front of the judge the next day and give him a sentence and get the conviction, investigate it, do the verdict, whatever, fair trial. And if he's convicted, sentence, and send him back to the same cell instead of bailing him out. You could do anything right now. So that's one. Another situation, going towards the north of the country, teenager killed a man, an elderly, 30 minutes after the police freed him. This also happened today. We have massive problems with both the policing and justice, the prison system and the police in general. Double standards is one thing. At times, wrong times, soft policing, soft justice. And wrong times, ultra hard and authoritarian policing and justice, which is fascinating, which makes you think the police, that around the world, a lot of people look at the British police, and for example, because they're not armed, apart from the armed police, they look at them and people don't know how it works in this country, so they make fun of us. They're like, your police don't have guns. But that's a symbol of what's happened over the last few decades, and over the last couple of decades, the softness of the police. But when people would just see those examples, they would assume that the police by nature is completely soft against everybody. They're not. They could be very hard when they want to. Remember the lockdown protests? Forget about what's happened recently with the with the riots and protests that we had a month ago. Even lockdown protests. What was the other one? Was it Sarah Everard? She had a vigil during the lockdown, post-lockdown. How the police treated people who were just doing a vigil. So when they want to, they can be hard. But it's usually the wrong times and wrong place. Same could be applied to the justice system. We've seen so many people who've been arrested for posting on social media. They get proper punishment. 2 years, 3 years. But this guy is allowed, the previous guy is allowed to be on bail. And now this teenager, we don't have the identity because he's under 18. There's another one. Shabana Mahmood has now confirmed that the prisoners who have been, I call them criminals, not prisoners, because they have not completed their punishment and to go through the official process of rehabilitation and the probation services. So they're still technically criminal, in my perspective, from obviously my view. The freed criminals are said to be housed in taxpayer-funded hotels as part of early release scheme. So the hotels are back, not just for foreigners and illegal migrants, but also for criminals. So we actually have law-abiding citizens of this country, this kingdom, who, for whatever reason, are in the queue waiting for a house. And I'm not necessarily talking about a certain type of homelessness and rough sleeping with drug addictions and mental illness. There are a lot of people who got into short-term problem, and the whole point of us technically having a safety net and a very basic welfare system, supposed to be, is to help those people. That they get into trouble, get bankrupt, or they fall out with family, they get kicked out, something happens, and they need a house. And they're not criminals. They're still trying their best not to commit crime in order to survive. They can't get housing. They still have to go to shelters or sleep on the streets, while hotels are being used not just for illegal migrants, but on top of that now the new criminals who are being released. Now, I get it that those who are now being released early, which again, that's a whole different topic to have, the debate about whether they should have been released or not, fine. But now that they've been released, I also understand that there has to be some sort of process to help them, but the process should have been done in prison, so that by the time they get out with probation services and everything else, they will be able to get jobs and everything else. But they rushed this, and that's the issue. Instead of releasing people that early, because we've already seen a different type of people, you could have gone and actually, those who were almost finishing their sentences, release those. Not those who've done 40% of their sentences, those who've done like 90% and they were already going through the slowly process of probation and everything else. You should have released those. That perhaps they would say they're not enough of them compared to what they are doing now. Thousands of people coming out. First, about 2,000, 1,700. Now, soon there's going to be another 3,000 coming out. So that is another issue. But then do you have some reaction to this? For example, Connie says, what a day for our country today. Pensioners have had their fuel allowance taken away from them. Meanwhile, early release prisoners leave prison to a welcome party, popping the champagne corks, with some going into taxpayer-funded hotel rooms. What a country to live in. Gordon says, now the Secretary of State for Justice tells the House of Commons that some early release prisoners could be given hotel rooms at taxpayers' expense. We are living beyond peak fast. Wilma says that the government have said they may use hotels to house prisoners released early, who have nowhere to live. You couldn't make it up, could you? And then there's another comment saying it's okay though. There isn't enough accommodation for the released prisoners, so they're going into hotels too. Do crime, do hardly any time, win a mini break. The funny thing about this, it's their dark humor, is that I know that the cost of hotels will be slightly different to the cost of the prison cells, but you do realize it's still a cost. you literally release these people because it was too costly and you don't have enough space in the cells. Now you're still spending the same money on the hotels and you have to give them food. Like they're not just going to leave them there. Because of the way the welfare system works, they're going to have to give them food and everything else. So again, as I said, on a very basic level, we can still have compassion for the few of the prisoners who actually did petty crime and they got released early, but they still were released at the wrong time. As in, it's not necessarily their fault. Like somebody, maybe one of the few who did do just petty crime and they were young, they made a mistake, they're not going to become criminals, but they still haven't actually gone through enough sentencing to start the process towards the end, because they start the process towards the end in terms of the integration back into society, probation, getting it ready, even in terms of talking to therapists in prison and everything else. They haven't actually done that. So I have compassion for those few who did the minor crimes and they were wrong. So yeah, if you release them that early, if they have nowhere to go, yes, they will be homeless and that could actually cause more trouble. But again, you should have thought about this. This conversation did not start last week. They were talking about this for a long time and then eventually they did it. It's complete insanity. Do you really think giving a hotel room to any of these people, whether they are the good ones who've actually who have regrets or those who are still going to do crime anyway, do you really think it's going to actually help them medium term or long term? Short term, they might, but actually you're going to create more dependency anyway instead of actually pushing them back into integrating into society. The whole thing is completely chaotic. Now, how many times do we have to come every single day to give an update on another part of this recent scandal? And you know what? When I say recent scandal, I mean the Labour government. That is the whole government is the recent scandal. But to be objective, let's not forget, the Tories, by not taking action, despite all the rhetoric that we're going to do things, not doing things, they have caused this, but does not mean that any new government will have to make the wrong decisions. Now, to an extent, Labour could have a point to say we have to make certain decisions because the Tories made a mess. I get it. Absolutely. Fine. The same thing that the Tories said in 2010. Fine. But you still have, with any problem that the Tories caused, let's just say, you still have a few options on the table. Why do you have to go with the worst options? I'm absolutely fascinated by every decision they are making, whether it's about the energy, the winter fuel allowance for the pensioners, whether it's with the immigration, whether they scrapped the Rwanda plan, which was not a good plan anyway, perfect plan, but there's no alternative, right? With the border situation, they made the wrong decision. With the winter fuel allowance, wrong decision. With the prison system crisis, wrong decision. With the university tuition fees. That they themselves, by the way, the Labour Party in power last time, they introduced the tuition fees, right? Now, there's an academic debate to have about higher education, whether it should be free or not. I don't think it should be free, but it's about how you introduce the tuition fees, right? But they are liars. So they used to be against it, right? Universities were free. Taxpayers used to pay for it. And then they introduced it, and then they campaigned against it. And then now the Tories increased it, was it 15 years ago, 14 years ago? Now they are increasing it again. Every decision is it's fascinating how they're shooting themselves in the foot because they are alienating the left and the right and the liberals. It's completely interesting. That actually there is a quick update for you guys, ladies and gentlemen. We have been keeping you guys up to date almost regularly on the approval ratings for two-tier Kia. We have the latest because the last time we checked, he was down. It was his approval rating was about minus 12% or minus 8%. You're gonna love this. The latest numbers, he's gone down so fast. No honeymoon period. There we go. Is Keir Starmer doing a good job as Prime Minister? The green one is good job, red one is bad job. Started the end of July. So actually, after his election, it was about 35% said good and 22%, for example, said bad. Now, 45% say bad, 25% say good. Is gone down so badly in terms of being about minus 20 in terms of the actual negative, obviously 20% his points. And it's so embarrassing how they had so much opportunity. Even I think they kind of subconsciously or psychologically they did it to themselves, because Boris Johnson, when he was elected, when he won the majority in 2019, there was an element of confidence and turned into arrogance and then complacency. But there was a level of excitement that everybody loves me. You know, the red wall voted for me, right? But then that created complacency and inaction. I genuinely believe, to a point, at least subconsciously, that Keir Starmer and his leadership team know that they don't have the public consent. 20% of the country proactively supported the Labour Party. That's how they won this election. The turnout was low. There was no excitement about Keir Starmer. This was not a 1997 Blair type of election. So I think that kind of created this lack of confidence. And that's why they created a pseudo-accidental arrogance. It was more like doubling down. So when he was criticized about two-tier policing and everything else, it came across as arrogant, right? He was like hunting down the protesters and everything else. But that's not coming from a position of confidence and actual power. That's desperation. It's not the same as, for example, if Boris Johnson, after 2019, when he had the support and everything else, and if he had done something like this, it would have come across as it's more authoritarianism because of the actual arrogance that he's got so much support, right? But with Keir Starmer, it's the other way around. The arrogance and the harshness, the ruthlessness is actually because he knows he's not loved. And he's just kicking off, he's just lashing out like a crazy guy. So I think that's why they're also continue to make the wrong decisions. Whether it's, like, again, wrong decision in the sense that whether it's by mistake or whether they do it on purpose, but they believe it's the right decision, or they know it's the wrong decision, but they make it anyway. It's so bad. Let's get some reaction, actually. First, let's go to some super chats. Susan, thank you for your super sticker. And Paddy saying that if they break their probation, they should go straight back into prison. Yes, they should. And Gary as well. Thank you, Gary Buchanan, for your support. And Mike says, I guess the Crims realized that they were in for a long, cold winter. Didn't take long, did it? Yeah. But now that they've been told they can go to hotels, they don't need to commit crime to go back to prison. Blackfish Blue says, taxpayers gonna tax pay into Starmer's regime. P.S. I wrote by mistake, but it's fitting. Oh, did you just edit the same comments? I just realized after posting it or something. Maya, thoughts on the 20,000 Haitian immigrants in Ohio, and the least of the problems is that they are eating pets. That's actually a very, very good point, by the way. The crisis of these nutters coming to America now, and some of the media obviously have been talking about what's happening to, you know, basically are either cannibals or eating animals, right? Pets. And the rest of the media are denying it, right? But that's not even the craziest thing about them in terms of the level of crime going up. There's so much happening in terms of sexual assaults and everything else. It's completely crazy that even when Trump mentioned it last night at the debate, there was, because it was Trump versus three people. You got the two moderators and Kathleen Kamala, and they were all but ganging up on him, saying, no, nothing's happened. It doesn't exist, apparently, this problem. But the eating the pets is not even, it just scratches the surface. That's it. And we could talk about that a lot, obviously. And soon I'll be going to the US, of course, to cover the election for 2CTV. We'll talk about all that. We're going to have some people, obviously, a part of Team Trump to be interviewed. We'll cover all that, hopefully. Marilyn says, hello, everyone. The people in my country do not see and hear what I see and hear. And they think that what I see and hear is not true. And that I'm crazy. I'm making it up and that I'm crazy. It depends what you're saying, by the way, Marilyn. But I know what you mean. Yeah, that's usually the case for everywhere. Seriously, guys, what's wrong with Starmer's face? Guys, it's got bigger problems than his face. Chris says, Labour, right hand, no idea what left hand is doing. Yeah. Oh, yeah, their right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, basically. Steve says, punish pensioners to please prisoners. That could be a merch. It's very true, though. It's very true. We got more updates on this tomorrow on the channel. I can't talk about everything today because there's so much to cover. More nonsense is coming out of Parliament. Let's see. Kat, thank you very much for your super chat. And RG says, UK GDP and economy literally flatlined on 0% in the past 2 months. Yeah, we literally had no growth. Winter is coming and it's going to be much worse than the White Walkers for England. That's very true. That is under in German, like Starmer is Nazi. Yeah, I know. It's not good. Stop being naughty. Richard says, please don't let him out again. He must like it in there. If he's a foreign national, please support him. I don't think he's a foreign national, but we don't. It didn't look. You can't tell these days. You can't tell. Paul says that this is just shocking. Shocking. Well, actually, it was blindingly obvious. A prisoner released does not mean he is free of previous crimes. Still a prisoner, should be rearrested and returned to jail. Yes, well, he is now rearrested, but he's out on bail. So, my son works in retail. Yesterday, a guy who is well known to the store was released from prison. Yesterday evening, he was back in the store shoplifting. They don't call the police anymore. So again, there are so many of these stories that's going to come out over the next few days, weeks, and months. About like what we're doing now tonight, about the early release prisoners already causing trouble or have already cases against them, yet still being released. It's so corrupt, the whole thing. Are they deliberately making all these mistakes? This is making it look like Starmer and his minions cannot even run a bath, let alone the UK. But that is definitely true. Like, I don't want to give them the sort of credit of being evil. And they are evil. Their actions are evil. But it would be a compliment if we say they are calculative. Like they're not. They're just completely chaotic. Gary says, who are they putting in these newly emptied cells? Labour opponents? Soon. Robbie says, Starmer is the biggest thug in the UK. He needs to be arrested for neglect of duty. To be fair, in a very constitutional level, neglect of duty does definitely apply to 3 areas of what this government is doing. Already, it's been 10 minutes they've been in power. One is the border security. Worse than the Tories, they're just letting it happen. At least the Tories are pretending that they're going to do something. That's one thing. That's the basic duty of any government. Security. Done. Number 2, in a civilized, developed country, look after your elderly and your pensioners. Betrayed them easily. Done. That's 2. And then thirdly is, again, the safety of people on the streets, which is the prison scandal that you are currently seeing. So definitely neglect of duty. Like it says, Keir Starmer is a silly sausage. Perfect summary of the night, ladies and gentlemen. What we're going to do is, after this, we are having a very serious conversation with the members of 2CTV Plus on the chat forum on Discord. If you want to join us, go on 2ctvplus.tv. Sign up, obviously subscribe to 2CTV Plus. You can also get access to our membership, as well as obviously the premium shows and documentaries, and the ability to chat with me and other like-minded freedom fighters from around the world. 2ctvplus.tv. I'm going to go straight to the chat forum after this. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.